On my flight to England, my mom bombarded me with 35 texts threatening to disown me if I didn't cancel my $12,500 honeymoon to babysit my siblings. He had been dreaming about this honeymoon for years. My fiancé, Alex, and I had meticulously planned every detail, an exclusive 2-week escape across England, visiting quaint villages, rolling hills, and historic castles. It wasn't just a trip. It was a celebration of surviving the chaos of wedding planning, of finally starting our lives together without interference from anyone, especially my family. The day of the flight, I woke up buzzing with excitement. I could almost hear the muted hum of the plane engines and feel the crisp English air when we landed. Alex had been equally giddy, packing my favorite snacks and a little surprise, a journal he'd bought for me to write down everything about our honeymoon. But then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mom. It first. It was casual. "Have you double-checked your bags?" I smiled. That was normal mom behavior. But within the next 10 minutes, another notification pinged. And another. Then another. I glanced at my phone and froze. 35 messages. All from her. I tapped open the first one. "I can't believe you're leaving. How could you plan this now? Your siblings need you." I frowned. Need me? I thought. I'm 28, and they are teenagers and preteens. Alex and I have babysat them before. But this is a honeymoon, the first big trip we've had in years. I scrolled through the messages, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't just nagging or passive frustration. Every single text escalated, growing angrier, more manipulative, more threatening. "If you go on this trip, don't expect to be part of this family anymore. I swear I will disown you if you don't cancel your honeymoon. Your father and I can manage without you. But your siblings can't. You're heartless." My hands shook as I showed Alex. His face darkened as he read. "She can't be serious," he said. "This is blackmail. This is insane." But the texts kept coming. Each one was more frantic than the last, painting scenarios of our siblings in dire need of our immediate intervention. She had even sent photos of them studying at the dining table, with captions implying they were miserable, overworked, and abandoned. It was manipulative, obviously, and yet, part of me felt the pull of guilt. My mom had always been controlling, but this was different. This wasn't subtle guilt tripping, it was full-blown emotional coercion, the kind that made your stomach knot and your head spin. I opened the next few messages, barely able to read them. "Do you even love your family? If you do, you won't leave. I'll tell everyone you're selfish. Your dad will be devastated. Don't make me regret everything I've done for you. Cancel this trip, or don't come back." I could feel my chest tightening. I had grown up in a home where saying no wasn't really allowed. Even as an adult, her threats had a strange, lingering power. But I also knew I had to choose. This was my life, my marriage, my honeymoon. Alex held my hand and said firmly, "We planned this together. You're not canceling. You need this too." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising panic. My mind raced through scenarios. What if she actually disowned me? Would it ruin family gatherings forever? Would my siblings really be in trouble? Or was this just another emotional trap? By the time we boarded the plane, I had my phone on airplane mode. I needed to breathe, to think, to remind myself why we were doing this. Alex leaned against me, whispering reassurances. I closed my eyes, imagining the rolling hills of the English countryside and the quiet peace we'd promised ourselves. But even 30,000 feet in the air, my phone buzzed again. I had notifications waiting, 35 messages I hadn't even read yet. I didn't open them. I didn't want to. For the first time in my life, I decided to put my own needs above everyone else's demands. Still, guilt gnawed at me. I knew this would be the longest 2 weeks of my life, not because of travel, but because of the storm waiting at home. As the plane began its descent into London, I looked out the window at the sprawling city below, feeling a mixture of liberation and dread. This trip was ours, but the reality was clear. My family, or at least my mom, would not let this go quietly. The honeymoon was supposed to be a time of joy, but somewhere deep in my chest, I felt the tension building. Alex squeezed my hand again. "Whatever happens, we face it together." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. She could threaten, manipulate, and scream in text messages all she wanted. This trip was mine, and for the first time in a long time, I decided I was going to fight for my happiness. No matter what, little did I know, this was only the beginning of a 2-week saga that would test my marriage, my patience, and the very definition of family loyalty. Stepping off the plane in London, I felt an initial rush of relief. The crisp air, tinged with hints of rain and city bustle, wrapped around me like a promise that this trip was real. For 2 weeks, Alex and I had planned to be free from schedules, deadlines, and most importantly, family drama. But as soon as we grabbed our luggage and headed toward the taxi line, my phone buzzed. It was a notification. I froze. My hands instinctively reached into my bag, almost to check it, but Alex stopped me with a gentle touch. "Ignore it," he whispered. "For now. Don't let her ruin this." I nodded, trying to follow his advice. London was everything I imagined. The winding streets, the double buses, the smell of fresh rain on stone pavements. I tried to immerse myself in the sights, the sounds, even the chatter of strangers passing by. Yet, the knowledge that somewhere at home, my mom was constructing another emotional ambush lingered in the back of my mind. That night, as we settled into a charming little hotel near the Thames, I finally gave in and glanced at my phone. 35 unread messages, 35 strings of guilt and threats. I opened the first few. "Don't think you can run from responsibility. Your siblings need you. You promised you'd help. You're abandoning them. How could you? I don't care about your wedding or your husband. Family comes first. Always." The words were sharp, almost physically so, but I noticed a pattern. They weren't just angry, they were carefully calculated. Each one was designed to make me feel guilty, to second-guess my choice. My chest tightened, but I didn't reply. Not yet. I knew if I engaged, I would fall into the trap she wanted me in. Instead, I turned to Alex. "It's relentless," I whispered, the words tasting bitter. "I feel like I can't even enjoy this trip." Alex held my hand across the small wooden table in our hotel room. "Then don't. Not because of her. You're allowed to enjoy this. You've earned this." I wanted to believe him. And so, we made a pact. No phone. No distractions. For the next 24 hours, we would explore London as if the world didn't exist outside these streets. We wandered through cobblestone alleys, ducked into cafes with steaming cups of tea, and marveled at the architecture that made every corner feel like a movie set. I laughed for the first time in days, genuinely, and even took a few selfies with Alex, capturing moments of pure joy. The city was magical, and for a brief moment, it felt like my mother's threats had never existed. But of course, reality has a way of intruding. The next morning, I woke up to a vibration on my nightstand. I had allowed myself to sleep with the phone on silent in an attempt to block out the noise, but now the notifications were too numerous to ignore. The count had increased. She had sent more messages while we slept. I opened them, heart sinking. "You will regret this decision. I can't believe you are prioritizing a trip over your own family. I hope you're happy being selfish. Don't expect any support from me ever again. Your siblings are crying. They don't understand why you're abandoning them. You're a terrible daughter." The words stabbed me. The images she sent weren't real, they were exaggerated snapshots she had carefully staged. My siblings sitting quietly, looking forlorn at the dinner table, captions dripping with emotion. I could see the manipulation clearly, yet my chest ached with guilt. Alex noticed my distress and immediately pulled me into a hug. "Don't let her win. You're not abandoning anyone. You're living your life. She's trying to control you, but that doesn't have to define your happiness." His words were grounding. I took a deep breath and silenced the notifications. For the next few hours, we immersed ourselves in history, the Tower of London, the British Museum, and walks along the South Bank. Each step away from the phone felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a piece that had long been held hostage by my mother's expectations. By the third day, however, the emotional tension began to seep into our experience in more subtle ways. We were visiting the Cotswolds, a series of picturesque villages with stone cottages and rolling green hills. I had expected this part of the trip to be my favorite, a chance to reconnect with Alex in a serene, almost storybook setting. But every photo I snapped, every small moment of awe, was tinged with a whisper in the back of my mind. She's sending more messages right now, and she was. One afternoon, while we sipped tea at a local cafe, I dared to glance at my phone. 50 new messages. My hand shook as I opened the first one. Your siblings are devastated. I can't even begin to explain how angry your father is. They asked for you. I told them you abandoned them. They're crying every day because of you. My stomach turned. I couldn't help the pang of guilt that struck me like a physical blow. I felt tears prick my eyes. But Alex squeezed my hand again, steadying me. They're fine. Look at the photos. She's fine. By the time we reached the Scottish Highlands, Alex and I had settled into a rhythm, one that balanced stolen moments of serenity with the constant undertow of my mother's messages. The rolling hills, mist-covered valleys, and quaint stone cottages should have been enough to make anyone forget the chaos back home. And for brief, shining moments they were. I laughed with Alex as we stumbled through small villages, tried our hand at local delicacies, and even attempted a few hikes that left us breathless and exhilarated. But no matter how far we traveled, my mother's presence was inescapable. By the 8th day, her harassment had evolved. Texts weren't enough anymore. She had begun sending videos of my siblings, carefully staged to look pitiful and helpless, accompanied by captions designed to twist my stomach into knots. Your sister hasn't eaten all day. She's asking for you. Your little brother tried to call but was too scared. He needs you. We're falling apart without you. How could you do this? Each notification was a dagger, each image a carefully crafted accusation. And then there were the calls, dozens, sometimes at all hours. My phone seemed to vibrate constantly, the ringtone a harbinger of panic. I had to turn it off repeatedly just to breathe. One evening, after a long day exploring the misty glens, we checked into a remote inn, a small, cozy place with a fireplace that smelled faintly of pine and smoke. I wanted to sink into the warmth and forget everything. But when I glanced at my phone on the bedside table, I froze. 47 new messages, 47 attempts to guilt, threaten and control. I showed Alex. He read each one with a growing scowl. This isn't normal, he said. She's trying to manipulate you into canceling your honeymoon. You need to see it for what it is. I nodded, but inside, a storm raged. I felt guilty not for wanting this trip, but because my mother had ingrained in me a sense of obligation so deep that it was nearly instinctual. Every time I laughed with Alex, a small, sharp voice in my head whispered, "They're suffering without you. You're abandoning them." That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind was a battlefield. Alex, ever patient, held my hand as I drifted into restless, interrupted sleep. Dreams were haunted by my mother's voice, alternating between pleading, accusing, and threatening. I woke several times, drenched in sweat, only to find new messages waiting for me. By the next morning, I had realized something crucial. I could no longer simply ignore her. Silence wasn't enough. The messages were piling up, each more aggressive than the last. Your father is furious. He can't believe you are prioritizing your honeymoon over your siblings. If you care about this family, you'll come home immediately. Otherwise, don't bother coming back. You've chosen selfishness over love. Shame on you. It was clear. My mother wasn't just upset. She was waging an all-out campaign to control me, to break my resolve, and to assert dominance over my choices. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that responding with guilt, fear, or hesitation only gave her power. I needed to reclaim it. I turned to Alex. I can't let this continue, I said. I need to respond, but I can't do it emotionally. I have to be strategic. He nodded. Do it carefully. Set boundaries. You don't owe her justification for your happiness. I drafted a message, careful and firm. I am on my honeymoon. A trip that Alex and I planned together. I will not cancel it. I love you and the family, but I will not be manipulated with threats. I expect respect for my choices, as I respect yours. We will communicate calmly when I return. I hit send, my stomach nodding as I did. The act of standing up to her was both terrifying and liberating. I felt a strange mixture of guilt, relief, and empowerment all at once. For the next few days, the tension escalated. My mother's messages became more frantic, but I refused to engage emotionally. I continued to send brief, boundary-setting replies, each one an assertion of my autonomy. Alex and I tried to immerse ourselves in the beauty surrounding us, but the psychological strain was undeniable. The Highlands, with all their majesty, couldn't fully erase the gnawing tension at the back of my mind. One morning, we hiked to a secluded waterfall, a spot only locals knew about. The journey was grueling, the path slippery with morning dew. But reaching the falls, with water cascading into a crystal clear pool below, felt like a reward for perseverance. We stood there together, the roar of the waterfall drowning out the world. I closed my eyes and let myself breathe, for the first time truly feeling the distance between me and my mother's control. But even in that moment of beauty, the messages arrived. I ignored them, but Alex's phone buzzed. He had begun receiving indirect texts from my mother too. "Alex, don't let her abandon the family. You have a responsibility too. If you allow this, I'll make sure everyone knows you're complicit in her selfishness." It was surreal. She had gone from controlling me to attempting to manipulate my husband. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. How far could someone go to assert dominance over another adult's life? By the middle of our honeymoon, we had developed a strict routine: explore during the day, disconnect from phones in the evenings, and focus entirely on each other. It was exhausting but necessary. I kept reminding myself, this was not just a vacation. It was a reclamation of autonomy, a test of our resilience, and a crucible for our marriage. One evening, after a long day wandering through Edinburgh's historic streets, we returned to our hotel to find yet another wave of messages. My mother had escalated further, now attempting to create a sense of moral obligation by sending screenshots of online articles about family duty and parenting failures. The texts read like a manifesto: "Selfishness destroys families. You're choosing pleasure over responsibility. Your siblings will never forgive you for this. Abandonment. I hope you're happy being selfish while your family suffers." I felt the familiar pang of guilt, but I also felt a spark of defiance. For the first time in my life, I realized that my happiness did not come at the expense of my family. I had not abandoned them, I had simply asserted boundaries. And asserting boundaries, I knew, was a form of love too. Alex noticed a shift in my demeanor. "You're growing stronger," he said quietly. "Every message you ignore, every boundary you set, is you taking back control. She won't like it, but that's not your problem." I nodded, feeling a strange combination of exhaustion and empowerment. I had spent so long living in the orbit of her emotional manipulations that taking these small steps felt revolutionary. By the 10th day, we had ventured into the Lake District, a landscape of serene waters and gentle mountains. We spent mornings boating on glassy lakes, afternoons hiking trails that offered breathtaking vistas, and evenings in cozy inns with roaring fireplaces. The beauty of the world around us, combined with our growing resilience, allowed us to experience fleeting moments of genuine peace, but the underlying tension was always there. Every message, every call, reminded me that my mother's control had not been fully broken. She was relentless, and each day away from home only seemed to intensify her manipulative tactics. Despite the stress, Alex and I found small victories. We laughed at inside jokes, took playful photos, and made promises to each other about how we would handle her when we returned. Each victory, no matter how minor, strengthened our bond and reaffirmed our choice to prioritize our marriage. By the end of part 3, I understood that this honeymoon was no longer just about travel. It was a crucible, a test of our emotional strength, our ability to set boundaries, and our commitment to each other. My mother's threats were powerful, but they were no longer defining me. I had learned that standing up for myself, even in the face of relentless pressure, was not betrayal, it was survival, and yet, I knew the storm was far from over. The next phase of the trip promised even greater challenges. My mother's manipulation would take new forms, designed to test not only my resolve but the very foundation of our marriage. By the 12th day of our honeymoon, Alex and I had managed to carve out a fragile equilibrium. Our routine was now well established: mornings exploring, afternoons immersed in local culture, and evenings cocooned in the quiet of our in-rooms, phones deliberately silenced. Yet even with this discipline, the shadow of my mother's relentless harassment loomed over every joyful moment. It was a crisp morning in the Lake District. Mist hung over the water, and the mountains appeared to rise like ancient sentinels watching over us. We had decided to rent a small rowboat, drifting lazily across the placid lake. The only sounds the rhythmic splash of oars and occasional calls of distant birds. For a while, the world felt like it was just Alex and me. I tilted my head back, letting the sun thin and muted through the morning fog kiss my face. The sensation of peace was intoxicating, a rare reprieve from the relentless anxiety that had plagued me for days. Finally, Alex said softly, breaking the quiet, "A moment where it feels like we're the only two people in the world." I smiled, leaning into him. I needed this more than I realized. even with everything back home. This is worth it. He kissed my temple, a silent reassurance. We've earned every second. And then, like a crack through glass, my phone buzzed. I froze. My heart sank before I even looked at it. But I knew what awaited. My mother's next wave of messages. The screen glowed with notifications, 33 new messages. My chest tightened. I could feel the old knot of guilt and anxiety twist in my stomach. Alex reached over and took the phone from my hands. "Do you want me to look first?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to see it. I need to face this. But not like before." I tapped the first message. "You think you can escape responsibility with this trip? Your siblings are in turmoil. Your father is heartbroken. You are abandoning them." I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. "It's the same message as always. Different words, same guilt." Alex nodded. "Then let's deal with it the same way. Boundaries." I typed a careful, measured response. "I am on my honeymoon. A trip planned with Alex. I have ensured your children are safe and cared for. I will not cancel. I love you and the family, but I will not engage in manipulation or threats. We will discuss calmly when I return." I hit send, my hands trembling slightly. A strange mix of relief and lingering anxiety coursed through me. Standing up in the boat, I looked at the serene landscape and whispered, "I can do this. I have to." The day passed in tentative peace. We explored the nearby village, wandered through flower-filled gardens, and enjoyed a quiet picnic by a small stream. For a few hours, the anxiety receded, replaced by genuine laughter and the warmth of connection with Alex. That evening, as we returned to our inn, the phone buzzed again. Alex and I exchanged a glance. No words were needed. The storm had not abated. This time, the messages were more aggressive, more personal, aimed directly at undermining my confidence. "You've chosen selfishness over love. Your siblings may never forgive you. Alex is letting you do this. How can he be happy watching you abandon your family? I hope you enjoy your trip while we suffer. You will regret this." I felt my jaw tighten. "It's escalating," I murmured. "She's not just trying to make me feel guilty anymore. She's trying to fracture us." Alex took my hands in his. "Then we face it together. That's all that matters. She can't touch what we have here unless we let her. We made a pact. No more reading messages unless absolutely necessary, and only one reply per day, calm and measured. We would not allow her to dictate the emotional tone of our honeymoon." The next morning, we visited a remote waterfall tucked deep in the highlands. The journey involved a steep climb along a rocky path, mist from the falls coating our hair and clothes. Reaching the edge, the sight took my breath away, the water cascading in a frothy torrent into a crystal pool, the mist creating tiny rainbows in the sunlight. This is perfect," I whispered. Alex smiled, his hand finding mine. "Perfect for us. Just us. No guilt, no messages, no one else." For a brief moment, I believed it. The world felt expansive, infinite, and ours. I laughed, a pure, unburdened sound, and felt the tension that had been coiled in my chest for days begin to unwind. But paradise is fragile, and reality has a way of intruding. By late afternoon, I received an email notification from my mother's account. The subject line was blunt. "Consequences of your actions." I opened it reluctantly. "I warned you. You ignored me. You've placed your desires above the needs of your family. When you return, there will be consequences. Your father and I are deeply disappointed. Your siblings may never forgive this abandonment." I felt anger flare inside me, raw and unfiltered. How dare she attempt to control my life even from hundreds of miles away? I looked at Alex, eyes filled with fury and desperation. He held me close. "You don't have to justify yourself. You've done nothing wrong. You are allowed to exist outside of her control." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I know, but it hurts. Every single word she sends is designed to make me question myself." And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just targeting me. She was trying to manipulate Alex as well, to create tension between us. I realized I needed to be proactive, not reactive. Silence, though protective, wasn't enough. We had to assert our boundaries strongly. Together. That night, we drafted a joint message. "We are on our honeymoon and will not cancel it. Your threats and manipulations are unacceptable. We expect respect for our choices and for our marriage. Any further attempts to manipulate us will be ignored until we return home." Sending it felt like a small revolution, a declaration that this trip and our life together belonged to us, not to her expectations or demands. The relief was immediate but partial. For the first time, I felt empowered rather than guilt-ridden, yet I knew this was only a temporary reprieve. My mother was relentless. I had no doubt she would escalate further, testing every boundary we had set. The following days were a delicate balance of beauty and tension. We visited historic castles, quaint villages, and serene lakes. Each evening, I silenced my phone, breathing in the quiet and focusing on Alex. I learned to recognize the difference between genuine concern and manipulative guilt, slowly reclaiming the ability to enjoy my honeymoon without constant emotional sabotage. By the end of the trip's second week, I realized something profound. My mother's messages, though aggressive, could not dictate my reality. I was standing on my own, fully aware of the stakes, but unwilling to surrender my happiness. I had learned to navigate the tightrope between familial obligation and personal freedom, and in doing so, I had grown stronger emotionally, mentally, and within my marriage. On our last day in England, we sat by a quiet lake, holding hands, the sun dipping behind the hills. The landscape was peaceful, almost impossibly so, and for the first time in weeks, I felt entirely present. Alex squeezed my hand. "We did it," he said softly. "We survived her storm and still managed to enjoy this." "You did it." I leaned into him, a mixture of exhaustion and triumph in my chest. "We did it together," I whispered, "and I've never felt more sure of us, of our marriage, of my choices." And as we watched the sun set, I realized something important. The real victory wasn't in silencing her or proving her wrong. The victory was reclaiming my life, my happiness, and my marriage without letting her define them. Little did I know, though, that the storm wasn't over. My mother's retaliation would take a new form when we returned home, testing everything we had fought to protect. But for now, we allowed ourselves this fleeting peace, knowing that the hardest part, standing firm in the face of relentless pressure, had been won. Flying back home, the sense of relief I had expected never fully arrived. Alex and I were exhausted physically from the whirlwind tour of England, and emotionally from the constant tension that had shadowed every moment of our honeymoon. Even so, there was a quiet pride between us. We had survived her manipulation, set firm boundaries, and in the process strengthened our bond. But as the plane touched down, I felt a familiar pang in my chest. My phone sat in my bag, silent but ready to erupt the moment we landed. I knew my mother would be waiting, either at home or through texts, emails, calls, whatever she could muster to pull me back under her control. We landed without incident, collected our luggage, and stepped outside into the familiar chaos of the airport. The smells, the sounds, the cold air hitting my face, it all felt simultaneously comforting and nerve-wracking. Alex squeezed my hand. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. As ready as I'll ever be. The drive home was quiet, our car filled with a tense calm. I tried to focus on the beauty of finally being in my own space again, but the looming confrontation could not be ignored. My mother's presence hung over the house, even though we hadn't yet entered it. When we walked through the front door, the silence was uncanny. My father was in the living room, giving me a neutral nod, while my siblings stared wide-eyed from the couch. No one spoke. I could feel the tension, thick and suffocating. And then, my mother appeared. She didn't greet me. She didn't smile. She simply folded her arms, eyes blazing. "So," she said, voice icy, "you're back." I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. "Yes, we are. The honeymoon went well." Her gaze hardened. "I hope you're proud of yourself. Leaving your family for 2 weeks while we handled everything. Bold choice." I held my ground, choosing firmness over guilt. "Mom, Alex and I planned this trip together. We ensured everyone was safe. We did not abandon anyone. I've made my choice, and I expect it to be respected," she huffed, clearly taken aback. "Respected? After what you've done? You think boundaries will erase responsibility? You've hurt your siblings and your father." Alex stepped forward, protective but measured. "She made her choice, and it's not up for debate. You can be upset, but that does not give you the right to manipulate or threaten her." The room went silent. For a moment, I thought she might storm off, but instead, she simply glared and turned away. My father remained quiet, watching the exchange with a mixture of relief and frustration. My siblings, sensing the tension had shifted in my favor, relaxed slightly. Over the next few days, the aftermath of my mother's threats became apparent. She tried smaller manipulations, passive-aggressive comments, guilt-laden suggestions, but her influence had weakened. Each time she attempted to provoke a reaction, Alex and I responded calmly, firmly, and without engagement. One evening, my sister approached me quietly. I thought you were abandoning us," she admitted, voice trembling. "But seeing you handle Mom, it's different now. You're standing up for yourself, and for us too, in a way." I hugged her tightly. "I would never abandon you, but I also need to live my life. That doesn't mean I don't care about you." She nodded, And I realized that part of this journey wasn't just for me, it was also for my siblings. They needed to see that boundaries could coexist with love, that standing up for oneself didn't equate to betrayal. Meanwhile, my mother's behavior began to shift subtly. She was still upset, still resistant, but the power her threats had once held was diminished. Alex and I continued our calm, firm responses, making it clear that emotional manipulation would no longer dictate our choices. By the end of the first week home, the atmosphere had changed. My siblings were more relaxed, even playful. My father, while still adjusting, seemed relieved to see that I was still committed to family, just on my own terms. And I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Not for surviving the ordeal, but for reclaiming my autonomy, reinforcing my marriage, and protecting my emotional health. One night, Alex and I sat on the back porch, drinking tea and watching the stars. The house was quiet, my siblings asleep, my parents nowhere in sight. "I can't believe how far we've come," I said softly. I didn't know if I'd have the strength to face her like that. Alex smiled, brushing my hair back from my face. "You did it. You stood up for yourself, for us, and you didn't crumble. That takes courage more than anyone realizes." I leaned into him, feeling the weight of weeks of tension lift just a little. "I never want to feel like I have to choose between my happiness and my family again." "You won't," he assured me. "We set boundaries. We're a team. And that's what matters." In the days that followed, the family slowly adjusted. My mother still attempted occasional jabs, but they were less frequent and far less effective. I responded with calm assertiveness, and over time, the tension dissipated. The honeymoon had not just been a trip, it had been a turning point. A test of my courage and emotional resilience. By the end of part 5, I realized that reclaiming my life wasn't about defeating my mother. It wasn't about proving her wrong or punishing her. It was about reclaiming my right to happiness, setting boundaries, and nurturing my marriage, all while maintaining love for my family. That understanding brought a deep, grounding peace I hadn't felt in years. The first week back home had been tense but manageable. Alex and I had reestablished our routines, integrating the normal rhythms of life with the lessons we'd learned on our honeymoon. I had discovered a strange, empowering truth. Setting firm boundaries didn't make me cruel or unloving. It made me human. It made me capable of protecting my own happiness while still caring for the family I loved. Yet as predictable as the days seemed, my mother had one final wave of emotional maneuvering. She had been quiet for a few days, probably assessing how effective her previous threats had been. And then, on a Thursday morning, she appeared in the kitchen as I was making coffee. The air between us was charged. Her eyes narrowed as though daring me to respond incorrectly. "Back so soon," she said casually, though there was an edge to her voice that betrayed her true intention. "I suppose the honeymoon was enlightening?" I set down the coffee pot and met her gaze calmly. "It was a wonderful trip, thank you." Alex and I had the opportunity to reconnect and enjoy time together. She smirked, a dangerous glint in her eye. "I hope you didn't forget your responsibilities while you were away. Your siblings needed you more than ever. I wonder how they'll recover from your absence." I felt the familiar tug of guilt, the old conditioning rising like a wave. But I remembered everything: the threats, the staged images, the frantic texts, the emotional manipulation. I had seen through it, survived it, and emerged stronger. I held my ground. "They are fine," I said steadily. "I made sure they were safe and cared for while we were away. My absence did not harm them. And moving forward, I will continue to ensure their well-being, but on terms that respect my own life and marriage." Her smirk faltered, replaced by something colder, almost calculating. "You think you can just decide for yourself? That your choices don't affect anyone else?" "Yes," I replied, surprising even myself with the firmness of my voice. "Because I have learned that my choices do not equate to neglect. They are part of living responsibly while maintaining my own boundaries. I am not abandoning anyone. I am living my life." Alex, who had been watching quietly, stepped closer. "We are a family, yes, but we are also individuals. We love each other, and we protect each other. Threats and guilt-tripping do not dictate our lives anymore." The silence that followed was heavy. For once, my mother had nothing to throw at me: no veiled accusations, no manipulative photos, no guilt-laden messages. She looked as if she were recalculating, trying to determine how to regain control in a scenario where her old tactics no longer worked. Over the next few days, she tried smaller manipulations, passive-aggressive comments at dinner, half-hearted attempts at guilt, and subtle reminders of my duties as the eldest child. But each time, I responded calmly, assertively, and without defensiveness. One evening, my younger brother, who had been quiet throughout the ordeal, came to me. I didn't realize how much pressure you were under, he said softly. I thought you were just selfish. But now I see you weren't abandoning us. You were standing up for yourself. I hugged him tightly. I would never abandon you. Loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing everything, even yourself. You can care for people and still set limits. This moment felt like a turning point. My siblings, for the first time, seemed to understand that my love for them wasn't conditional on my submission to my mother's demands. They respected my boundaries, and their support reinforced my own resolve. During this period, Alex and I spent more time reconnecting as a couple. We laughed over memories from the honeymoon, joked about the ridiculousness of some of my mother's staged photos, and planned small getaways to continue nurturing our marriage. Each shared smile and inside joke became a testament to the power of standing together. One afternoon, my mother approached me again, her demeanor slightly different, less threatening, almost hesitant. I suppose I can't change your mind, she said, her tone almost reluctant. You seem more determined than I expected. Yes, I replied simply. I have learned that my happiness is my responsibility, just as yours is yours. We can coexist without threats or manipulation. I will always care for you and the family, but I will not allow fear or guilt to dictate my life. She said nothing further, walking away with a stiff posture. For the first time in years, I felt she had met a boundary she could not overstep. It was not triumph in the conventional sense, not a battle won, but a quiet acknowledgement that my autonomy could not be erased by intimidation. Over the next week, life slowly returned to a sense of equilibrium. My mother's attempts at control decreased dramatically. She still expressed disappointment occasionally, but she no longer sent threatening messages or staged scenarios. She seemed to be learning reluctantly that her attempts to manipulate me would not succeed if I held firm. Alex and I spent evenings reflecting on what had happened, processing the emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks. I'm proud of you, he said one night as we watched the sunset from our porch. You faced years of conditioning and emerged with your boundaries intact. That's incredible. I leaned into him, feeling the weight of weeks of tension lifting. I never want to feel like I have to choose between my happiness and my family again. And I won't. I realized that the real victory was not in silencing my mother or proving her wrong. It was in reclaiming my life, my marriage, and my emotional well-being. I had learned that love could coexist with firm boundaries, and that standing up for myself did not make me unloving. It made me resilient, aware, and empowered. The stage was now set for the final resolution. The lessons of the honeymoon, the confrontation at home, and the emotional growth we had achieved as a couple would culminate in the ultimate affirmation of our boundaries, our love, and our independence. The days following the last confrontation with my mother felt almost surreal. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the constant, suffocating weight of her manipulation pressing down on me. The house, which had previously felt like a minefield of emotional landmines, began to feel like a place I could breathe in again. I still knew the tension lingered in corners and glances, in subtle reminders of old patterns, but now, it no longer dictated my life. Alex and I had settled into a rhythm at home that reflected everything we had learned on our honeymoon. We woke up together, drank coffee in the quiet morning, and shared plans for our days, small joys that reminded us that we were a team, partners first, and that we were no longer at the mercy of my mother's whims. My mother's behavior had shifted dramatically. Gone were the frantic texts, the staged photos, the constant threats. She was quieter, more restrained, though I could sense a subtle unease whenever she was in the room. It was almost as if she were testing the limits of her control and realizing, reluctantly, that they no longer existed. The first real test of this new balance came when she invited herself, or rather, insinuated that she would be stopping by to discuss the events of the past few weeks. I braced myself, expecting another wave of manipulation, another lecture on how I had supposedly hurt the family. Instead, when she arrived, she carried herself with a careful neutrality. She didn't scold or guilt. She simply watched as Alex and I moved through our home with the calm confidence we had cultivated during the trip. I suppose I should acknowledge that you've changed, she said cautiously, a faint edge of respect or maybe resignation in her voice. I nodded, measured and calm. I have learned that my life, my marriage, and my happiness are my responsibility. That doesn't mean I don't love the family. It means I am no longer allowing fear or manipulation to control me. She said nothing for a moment, just watching me. Then, with a slow exhale, she muttered, I suppose I can't argue with that. Alex, sensing the subtle shift, stepped beside me. We are still family. We love and care for each other. But boundaries are necessary. And now, we all have them. The room felt lighter after that. My mother, still resistant to the idea of me fully asserting myself, seemed to accept that this was no longer a battle she could win. It was not about punishment or vindication. It was about the quiet assertion of autonomy that could no longer be erased. Over the following weeks, life at home slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. My siblings began to respect the boundaries I had established. They saw that my love for them was unchanged, even as I refused to allow my mother's emotional manipulation to define my choices. For the first time, I realized that setting boundaries was not just an act of self-preservation, it was also an act of love. One evening, as Alex and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my youngest sibling approached us with a small, tentative smile. "I think I understand now," they said softly. "You can love us and still do what's right for you." I pulled them close, holding them tightly. "Exactly. Love doesn't mean giving up yourself. It means knowing how to care for yourself and others at the same time." Alex looked at me, pride in his eyes. "You've grown so much through all of this. I've never seen you so steady, so sure of yourself." I smiled, leaning against him. "It was terrifying, but necessary. I couldn't have done it without you." The final weeks of adjusting to life back home were not without small tensions. My mother tested boundaries occasionally. A comment here, a suggestion there, but none of it had the power it once held. Each time she tried, we responded calmly, firmly, and without defensiveness. The lessons of the honeymoon, the strategic handling of texts and threats, and our shared resolve had transformed the dynamic completely. Eventually, the family began to find a new equilibrium. Dinner conversations became lighter, laughter returned to the house, and my siblings began to express themselves without fear of repercussion. Even my mother, while still resistant to fully acknowledging my autonomy, gradually adapted to the new balance. She no longer tried to manipulate or coerce. She began to understand, begrudgingly, that her influence could no longer dictate my choices. Alex and I also began to plan small trips again, short getaways that reminded us of the freedom we had fought to reclaim. Each excursion reinforced our bond and reminded us that life could be lived fully, even in the presence of challenges. One evening, months after our return, my mother approached me quietly. "I suppose I underestimated you," she said, her voice softer than it had been in years. "I thought I could push you, but I see now that you're firm." I smiled gently, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. I've learned that boundaries are not about defiance. They're about respect for myself, for others, and for the family. I hope we can move forward with that understanding. She nodded slowly. It wasn't a full apology, not an admission of wrongdoing, but it was acknowledgement. And for the first time, I felt a true sense of peace. Alex and I stood together, hands intertwined, feeling the weight of months of tension lift finally. We had faced relentless manipulation, guilt-tripping, and threats, and emerged stronger not just as individuals, but as a couple. Our marriage had been tested in a way few experiences could have predicted, and we had passed. The final weeks at home were calm. Life continued, steady and predictable. My mother maintained a wary respect for boundaries. My siblings flourished in an environment where love and rules coexisted. And Alex and I could finally live without the constant shadow of fear or guilt. Looking back, I realized that the journey had not been just about a honeymoon. It had been about reclaiming myself, my choices, and my marriage from the grip of manipulation and control. It had been about proving, to myself and to my family, that love does not require surrendering your life to fear or coercion. One evening, as Alex and I sat on the porch watching the stars, I felt a sense of quiet triumph. "We did it," I whispered. "Yes," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "We reclaimed everything. Your life, our marriage, your happiness. Nothing can take that away from us now." I nodded, feeling a deep, enduring peace. We had navigated the storm, faced the manipulation, and emerged not only unbroken but stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. In the end, the lessons I had learned, the courage to set boundaries, the strength to stand firm, and the power of a partnership built on mutual respect became the foundation for the life I had always wanted. My family, while still imperfect, had adjusted. My marriage had been tested and had flourished. And I, for the first time in years, felt truly free. The journey from that flight to England, from 35 threatening texts to the reclamation of my life, had been harrowing, but it had also been transformation. I had learned that happiness, love, and autonomy are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist beautifully when defended with courage, patience, and unwavering resolve. And with that, I finally exhaled, letting go of the last remnants of guilt, fear, and anxiety. The storm was over. The boundaries were set, and the life Alex and I were building together, free and fiercely protected was just beginning. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who tried to control your life? How did you handle it? If you've ever faced manipulative family drama, share your story in the comments below. Like this story if you believe setting boundaries is an act of love. Subscribe and hit the bell for more dramatic Reddit stories like this. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to prioritize your happiness.